Many sights and sounds accompany a graduation ceremony: tossed mortarboards, pomp and circumstance, and speeches. But graduation has its less tangible accompaniments too. Among them, reflection and gratitude. For literary scholars, reflection often takes the form of a story. As committed readers and writers, this group of graduates is accustomed to turning diffuse reflections into meaningful narratives. Whether those narratives take the form of a sestina for one of those 3-hour writing workshops we just heard about, or take the form of a chapter of a dissertation. What kind of story will each of us tell ourselves about getting to this day? During our time in the English department, we have all studied how language shapes experience, observation, and imagination. My fellow PhD recipients and I have traced our own paths of reflection into works that fascinate us. One discovers perfect sentences in J.M. Coetzee's novels. Another laughs to herself, envisioning a rowdy stage performance of Thomas Middleton's A Chaste Maid in Cheapside. One discerns the social wit in Jane Austen's fiction, and another unpacks wonders folded into a single line of poetry by Elizabeth Bishop. All of today's graduates have learned to think about how stories begin and end. We have found that literary art often complicates the very ideas of beginning and ending. And yet, for all our sophistication about how imaginative literature works, simple storytelling maintains its pull. There is a certain appeal to shaping the work, thought, and life of these years into a tidy retrospective story that follows a straight line from clear beginning to a clear end today. The hitch with that kind of tale for me is that I just finished a dissertation that is largely about the writing of middles, about the imaginative power of the uncertainties and the possibilities to be found between beginning and ending. It just wouldn't fit for me to offer up a linear story about the pursuit of literary scholarship. There is an order of big events in a PhD, an order of exams, courses taken and taught, research, writing, and a dissertation finally filed. But any truly textured narrative of doctoral study needs space for the small events too. My own grad school story needs the years' worth of afternoons spent working in the company of friends. Afternoons when I would interrupt to read them a hilarious line from Frank O'Hara, or to ask them, which is the better verb to use in the sentence of my dissertation introduction? It needs those numberless meetings with advisors that were scheduled to last half an hour, but would stretch to 2 and sometimes 3 as conversation moved thrillingly from writer to writer, poem to poem. None of us did this work alone, and thank goodness for that. I think the most fitting reflection to offer today is a story of all we have been offered. As graduate students at Stanford, we have had incredible institutional backing, ranging from the financial support that made our work doable at all, to a departmental ethos that encourages collegiality and intellectual daring. We have been surrounded by exceptionally warm staff, bright undergraduates, and generous peers. The work of the women with whom I have the honor of graduating today, Heather Hausers on contemporary American novels of sickness and the environment, Natalie Phillips on distraction, cognitive science, and 18th century literature, and Emma Virublova on foreign languages in Renaissance England. These are models of the most dynamic literary scholarship. We have also had the model of dedicated professors who think with us and challenge us, advisors who pushed us out of comfort zones and encouraged us through the inevitable moments of doubt. These mentors show us what it means to sustain an intellectual community, what it means to direct one's teaching, writing, and reading toward helping others see what contribution they can make. Finally, we have been supported by our families and friends. They have loved us, believed in us, humored us. They have kept us grounded. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And I'll close with one more hallmark of graduation day: the taking of pictures. My beloved grandmother, who was the most inspiring reader I've ever known, shared many writers with me. And one of them once observed this, of how memory crafts its stories or takes its pictures. Quote, "The genius of memory is that it is choosy, chancy, and temperamental. It rejects the edifying cathedral and indelibly photographs the small girl outside chewing a hunk of melon in the dust." When we come to tell our stories about our time at Stanford, I hope we will include those sweet, stray details that have led us to this moment. Thank you.
I'm a little bit shorter than the last speaker. Thanks a lot, Claire. That's a hard act to follow. My name is Shannon. I am graduating class of 2010 with a BA in English. And a lot of people ask us, what do you do with that? I guess some of us become starving artists. Some of us become English teachers. Some of us do other completely unrelated things. But it's still a really valuable experience, and I am really honored to be here to share a poem I wrote for this occasion. The title is Anymore. It took 2 people to make one of me, 9 months in the making, 12 hours, and then I'm free. To learn to cry, to crawl, to walk, to run, to say no to everything. On my first day of kindergarten, I tell Mom before she leaves, I'm not a baby anymore. Peanut butter sandwiches, overalls, and fireflies recede as I study for the SATs and driver's ed. The next great American novel goes unwritten. The fat letter arrives. I celebrate the big 18. My parents tell me I'm not a kid anymore. The first week on the farm becomes my first year, becomes my first C. Opportunity becomes responsibility, becomes sleepless months with friends both old and new. Friends like Chaucer, Melville, Poe, and Gogol, to name a few. Our time together ends with a piece of paper as the next great adventure begins. Now it's 40 hours a week, sleeping at 10, jeans on Fridays, a 1-year lease, a car to call my own. I may not be in your lecture halls or haunting the stacks in green, but a student I have always been, and a student I will forever be.